So what are the types of sculpture? We can start first with relief sculpture. And when I'm talking about this, I always say, think about the word relief. And what I think this technique does is relieve the sculpture of its mass. So why we call it relief sculpture? Well, it's giving relief from the mass of the sculpture. Now, what does this mean? We can go to the Palace of Ashurbanipal for some great examples. This is a palace from the Mesopotamian time period. This is Assyrian specifically. And the palace was famous for having all these relief carvings all over the wall. And what the carvings are known for, the technique, is this idea of having a backing element, this idea of the stone itself, right? And what the sculptor does is he carves, right, away the backing element, right, in order to make this image pop out at you, right, to come out of the backing element of the stone. So he's relieving the stone of mass, right? He's getting rid of it, hence relief sculpture. And you can have low relief, like you see here. You'll notice it's not very defined from the background. And you also can have high relief as well. And so this is a great example of a relief sculpture to look at these different carvings from Ashurbanipal's palace. Some other ones here. But you can also see high relief by looking at these sculptures from the Parthenon, the Greek temple that we'll look at later on when we discuss their culture. And you'll notice this is very high relief, where you have the backing elements still in place, of course, but these figures are really, really popping out at you three-dimensionally, even though if you think about it, they're not, because they're still attached to the backing element. So again, another good example there. And then, it's not only with stone that you see relief carvings. You also can see it used often with metals. The technique's a little bit different, of course, because they're using a casting approach here, like you saw with lost wax casting. But the Benin bronzes are a great example of relief carvings in metal. You also can discuss sculpture in the round, or what we call 3D sculpture. And thinking about sculpture in the round, of course, again, is a terminology. Think about how you look at this Bernini sculpture. You're seeing it from all dimensions, right? You can move around the piece. You're seeing it literally in the round. You can walk around it. So this is where sculpture in the round, where it comes from, or we call 3D sculpture, because you're seeing it, again, as a total 3D piece. These are pieces that are meant to be, again, explored by walking and looking at all the different sort of viewpoints of the sculpture. This is why I tried to give you a couple different shots here. So you're seeing the sculpture from different viewpoints. So you can consider it in that kind of way. Here's another very, very famous sculpture in the round, which is great to consider from different viewpoints, which is the Dying Gaul from Greek Hellenistic culture. Which again, if you're looking at it from one perspective, you often have a very different view than from a different perspective. So this is another great example of sculpture in the round. And, there's so many examples of sculpture in the round, it's hard to keep track. Notice, though, that some of them don't really beg for you to walk around them, but again, there's still sculpture in the round. So here you have Rodin's The Kiss, you have Venus de Milo from Greek culture, and of course the famous Critias boy from Greek culture as well. You also can look at kinetic sculpture and speak a little bit about kinetic sculpture. Kinetic means to be in motion. So the best example I have for you there are the mobiles that were created by Alexander Calder. And this is the one that's at the National Gallery of Art in DC. And I did my undergraduate there at George Washington University. So I'd often go down to the National Gallery and look at the art. And I remember always seeing this piece, and it's a mobile, so it's meant to shift and turn and move, right, with the air currents as they come in and out of the museum. So it's a constantly changing experience because it's a kinetic sculpture. And again, a nice shot of Untitled as well here in the East Gallery building. And another kinetic sculpture discussed a bit in your book is Jean Tinjouli's Homage to New York. This was a sculpture that was actually built to destroy itself. So thinking about sculptures in motion, this one literally was like meant to operate, like it was all these gears and different things that were like put into motion. He turned the machine on essentially. And over time, it just basically started to like fall apart and things started to fly off of it and stuff. So I often think of this as early performance art as well, because this was done at the Museum of Modern Art in New York as the sculpture just basically destroyed itself right over time.